Good evening and welcome on back to the overnight edition of From Day One. As it says over on the right hand side, Megastructures are here with open lines for Linda Moulton Howe and of course Art Bell. Grab the mailbag real quick, of course, as we begin. We once again, as always, return to November 3rd, 2015 for this section, the final hour of this Midnight in the Desert. So without further ado, from the 25 time zones and the Great American Southwest, we return to Linda Moulton Howe and Art Bell.
Delworth as well, and he said that it is these bands of winds that have been moving toward the South Pole, and that what they have found is that the temperatures are so cold and the winds are so strong that where ice is coming off of Antarctica and falling into the water, instead of moving north in circulation and melting as would be expected, the winds are forcing all of this breaking ice to stay around Antarctica, and the temperatures are going colder. And in fact, October 6th, a little less than a month ago, NASA reported that when Antarctica ice grew to its annual peak on October 6, 2015, this year's maximum ice fell much lower to roughly the middle of the amount that it had been measured during the past 37 years of satellite observations. Not increased, it was lower. And that scientists speculate that it is possible that the spreading warm El Nino in the Pacific has dampened Antarctic ice buildup, but that the hemispheric winds are so much stronger than they used to be because of a warming atmosphere, and that one consequence is that sea ice that melts and breaks off of Antarctica clusters around the continent instead of floating northward and melting, which is exactly what Professor Delworth told me was his analysis, and this came out officially what I just read to you from NOAA. So we have climate warming, global climate warming. We have a North Atlantic having to do with the cold blob there, and then we have what you might call paradoxical data that there is Antarctic buildup of ice, but that it may very well be related to the winds there that are cooling everything down and keeping the ice from spreading. And it may be both in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere that the changes in intensity and bands of winds are causing more impact than anybody had ever seen in computer models.
All right. Well, you just explained something that was very interesting, and I don't know that I got it. In other words, you're right. There is a story saying that there is now more Antarctic ice than ever before, not less. And so you're telling me, no, that's wrong. There is less. Is that correct?
Yeah, they had a measurement in October, on October 6th, and this was NASA from satellites, saying that the annual peak of Antarctic ice was much less than it had been last year or the year before. In fact, that it measured at about the middle amount of buildup that they have seen on average over the last 37 years. But bigger than that is that the paradox of hearing about more ice in Antarctica could very well be tied to these strange increasing intensities of wind bands that are moving toward the South Pole, and they're going to increase snowfall from more moisture that's being carried in warmer atmosphere, but the winds are also pushing against any ice getting north. And so you've got two things at work. You've got brute force of winds holding the ice that falls off of Greenland, and then you've got the colder temperature from the intensity of the winds creating more snowfall, all of it related to global warming.
All right, so what happens if all that ice that's being held there by the winds you're talking about suddenly somehow gets set free?
It's a good question, because if you jump back up to the North Atlantic, the more ice comes off of Greenland into the North Atlantic, it's fresh,
Right.
fresh water.
That's right, yes.
And it is going to dilute that salty water. And at least Professor Delworth, he's not dismissive about anything, but he says that the computer models, I said there have been some headlines that Western Europe could end up facing much colder winters.
Oh, yes.
Do you think that's possible? And he said there's very little evidence to support that. The idea that this weakening or collapsing AMOC will cause severe cold over Western Europe is just not supported by the science. He goes into the computer models, which he does a great deal of computer modeling, and they see that there definitely could be a slowing of the conveyor belt, but that it will be gradual, and that the positive upside to all of this is that if the conveyor belt were going to be allowing colder temperatures in the Western Europe and along the east coast of the United States, while we know that water temperatures from the Gulf and the South are getting warmer and warmer and warmer every summer, that we might end up with one of those, by the grace of God, we've got warmer waters that are meeting with colder waters, and it's gradually slowing the conveyor belt, but nothing catastrophic, and that in fact all of this warm water would help temper what would happen to Europe if the conveyor belt gets slower. So we are on right now the most complicated planet. In every direction, there are contradictions and paradoxes because global warming is producing way more water in the atmosphere, and that water has to come out. But at the same time as warmer air gathers more water, it also denies waterfalls in lots of areas of the planet. That's why computer modeling for getting to 400 parts per million CO2 and beyond, and we hit 402, we hit 400, I think, or 402, just a year ago,
right.
And that the computer models have always shown there will be huge droughts and there will be huge flooding events because it's called adiabatic warming and cooling. When you have these...
You know what, though, Linda, I've got to go back to this because it's really important. If the American people don't care about climate change enough to do anything about it, and that is what this study says, imagine how little they care just in case any of those ocean currents are in trouble or potentially could be in trouble. The answer is -10.
Well, I'll tell you something that is already happening, and this is coming from people who communicate to me at earthfiles.com about where they are living in Florida and North Carolina and South Carolina. And these are direct letters saying that even now, when there is a full moon, they can have flooding in their sidewalks and streets, the ones that are very close to sea level. And that these are coming from people who have lived there for a very long time. They've never seen this before. And I also know from a person who does not want their name to be used or their title, they are working inside of Florida government. And they said the biggest secret is that there have been all kinds of meetings with the governor on what are they going to do because they are getting flooding. They're getting lots of flooding for all kinds of events and reasons that they didn't have before. And remember James Hansen, he got together, I think it was 16 scientists, and they released, it wasn't very long ago, and it was about the fact, in fact, I have it right here, it was NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies is where he has been, and he now directs the program on climate science awareness and solutions at Columbia University's Earth Institute. He and 16 other prominent climate researchers collaborated on a July 2015 paper in which, this is James Hansen, with them said, quote, if the ocean continues to accumulate heat an increased melting of marine terminating ice shelves of Antarctica and Greenland, a point will be reached at which it is impossible to avoid large-scale ice sheet disintegration with sea level rise of at least several meters, close quote. And that was one of the headlines in the New York Times back in July when they released that paper. And Hansen said that he thought now conservatively that by New Year's Day 2100 that there could have been a 12-foot rise in sea level. Well, that would take out at least half of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not...
I would like to repeat to you, Linda, there's study after study. The American people don't care. Now, I grant you, when the seawater, or actually seawater with not as much salinity as was there previously, begins to lap at their ankles, they might care, but not until then. Guaranteed.
Well, this is now, we're in a laboratory test, Art. We're in a living laboratory test. The planet is changing, and islands are going to go under.
Yes.
People are going to have to be moved, and animals are dying, and trees are dying, and that somewhere along the line, maybe there will be that real tipping point where it is rubbed so hard in our faces that people will act, or it's going to be that there will be so many catastrophes that governments can no longer pay for that it will force Earth and civilizations back to a new level of energy use, consumption, and emission.
Well, I guess if there are really big emergencies, if we get nothing but Category 5 after Category 5, and it's moving that way now, actually, Linda. We're getting an awful lot of Category 5s. You, of course, watched that massive hurricane that made itself a Category 5 virtually overnight and then dissipated just about as quick, right?
Yeah, the intensity that brought that to the 5 category, and then the release of the energy is part of what they call this hugely dynamic, where everything is going to be more dynamic. Professor Delaware said exactly the same thing when I said, what is it that you most expect will be outstanding in the rest of the 85 years of this century? And he said it will be the increasing intensity in storms, that the computer models show that the storms will become increasingly violent, but the good side is there may be fewer storms. They don't fully understand why the computer models show that, but that is what they show. Great intensity, fewer intense storms.
Interesting. All right. Well, if you were living in the Philippines, you wouldn't know that this year, that's for sure. Listen, Linda, would you be up to answering some listener questions? You've laid out an awful lot of material tonight, right?
Yeah.
All right, good. Hold it right there then. We've got a break coming up, and when we get back from it, I will lay out, well, I'll do the talk, actually. And so if you want to speak to Linda Moulton Howe about something she has said, now is the time to begin thinking about it. Boy, she has really laid out some serious material tonight. No question about that. I'm Art Bell. Midnight in the desert, scorching across the land.
I can see her lying back in her satin dress in a room where you do what you don't confess. Somewhere on your father taking with that hand creeping down.
Midnight in the Desert spans the world. To call us from outside the U.S. and Canada only, use Skype with a headset mic if on a computer and call MITD 55. That's MITD 55.
All right, so here's a talk, short version, mind you. Our public number to reach Linda, area code 952-225-5278. One more time. Area code 225-5278. Skype. We love Skype because it sounds so good. Now, you can download Skype to your whatever, your phone, your iPad, whatever. It's free. Skype is free. And it's pretty cool because A, it lets you sound better, and B, you can make free calls from anywhere in the world. Absolutely free. So when you get Skype, put it on your device, become familiar with it, and then when you're a little familiar with it, you'll see a plus sign up there, and that's called Add a Contact. Push it. And then add us. In the case of North America, MITD 51, as in midnight in the desert. Case doesn't matter, just the letters, MITD 51. If you're in the rest of the world, somewhere else in the world, it's MITD 55. That's MITD 55. That's the way to reach us, and that's the way to ask a question if you would like to. There is just one more thing I would like to ask Linda about, and that is actually two questions. One, it seems to me that there are fewer what I would call legitimate UFO sightings in fairly recent years than there have been in the last, 50 years, 45 and on. It got pretty hot, 47, whatever. Got pretty hot. A lot of sightings everywhere. Not so much in recent years, it seems to me, although I know Linda knows of one in Georgia, and if we can do a very short summary of that, I'd love it.
Well, I will try. It is one heck of a story, and from my Earth Files news point of view, I would say that there has been increasing numbers of substantive UFO experiences, encounters, people in the human abduction syndrome.
Oh, yes.
Yes, the high strangeness has increased from where I sit. And in this particular case, we're going back to June 28th, 2015, starting a little bit after sunset in the Fort Hunter area in Georgia near Savannah. A sergeant who has asked for anonymity, so I call him CJ, his wife, 2 children, a dog, and a cat, set off in a truck for a move from Fort Hunter going to Colorado Springs, Colorado, for him to do new work at Fort Carson. And their choice was to travel at night, cooler for the animals and the kids, not as many trucks and cars on the road, and so they would sleep in the day and go at night. And the plan was, with his brand new GPS, not a man unfamiliar at all with GPS. He's been in the Army for a long time. He has, part of his work is to be able to identify things that are in the sky, what type they are, engines, everything.
Okay.
So he's an observer. He got a brand new GPS, programs it, final destination, Colorado Springs, Colorado, and the route will be through Atlanta, 4.5 hours from the Hunter Army Airfield region outside of Savannah to Atlanta. They should be there at midnight. Something bizarre happened at about 112 miles into their journey, and neither the wife nor the husband knew that this occurred, that the GPS took them off on a route that went almost 90 degrees to the north when they are, or northeast, when they were going essentially what would be northwest to Atlanta. And they end up, when they become conscious of anything, it is of a light. And they end up pulling the truck over to the side of a road, not understanding where they are or what's happening, but they're seeing this bright white light, comes down in front of the truck. The Army sergeant estimates, based on all of his experience with looking at things aerial, that it's 820 feet wide, which is about 3 football fields. and that this has come down about 200 feet above the car. He thinks that so if it's 820 feet wide, it's about 200 feet high. He and the wife are both looking at, they see different shapes, as often people do, but something coming around the middle that might have been lights in set windows, but it's right below that midline, that they see 5 dark symbols. And everything about the timeline seems jumbled. And where they stopped and pulled over, they had just gone through thick fog. And there was no reason for there to be thick fog. It was a clear, beautiful night. There was no rain, but they remember very clearly, both of them.
Okay, so Linda, if I'm getting this correctly from you, this craft, you're thinking, misdirected them, took control of their GPS, and brought them where the craft wanted them to be.
To Wadley, Georgia, which is a really tiny town. And he has only one solid thing that gives a timeline for all of this being in this truck with this huge thing, is it blinks out. It didn't travel. It just blinked out. And he looked at his watch, and his digital watch said 1:29 a.m., which would have been Eastern time. And he thinks, I think we were there for just 5 minutes, Linda, but he said, when it disappeared, my wife and I are completely confused, and I move the car forward, and not very long, we see a gas station, and I pull in, and I try to get out of the truck, and my legs feel like wet noodles. I don't know what is happening or what is wrong. My wife feels disoriented. The kids are asleep in the back, and they get something at this gas station, and then they are still following their GPS in the car. And he said, we are so disoriented that I'm still going toward where it says that the final destination is still ahead of us. And he said, we get in the car blindly and we drive where the GPS then says we've reached the final destination. And it was a cemetery, empty, dark, in Wadley, Georgia. And at this point, his left brain begins to start clicking in. Something is really wrong. Why aren't we in Atlanta? What is wrong? How has this happened? And that's when he turns around, goes back now with sort of a disturbing alarm beginning to enter his consciousness about what in the hell has happened. And they get back on the road. They get to Atlanta 1 hour after sunrise, and they check into a motel. He begins to have nightmares and can't sleep, and they're all upset, the husband and the wife, and they get back on the road again. It's the next night, the night of June 30th, where all of this dovetails into something reminiscent of Jim Peniston at R.A.S. Bantwaters in Rendlesham Forest 36 years before. They drive, and then they try to get some sleep because they are exhausted and beginning to feel sick. And so now they check into a Motel 6. The Motel 6 gives them an 8.5 by 11 type receipt. And why this is relevant. When he went to bed the second night, he's seeing gray beings, nightmares, all sorts of things are coming, jumbling into his mind. And as far as he's concerned, he was sleeping, seeing these beings, and then it would be just like you open your eyes and you can't believe. You're standing in the motel bathroom, you have the receipt from the Motel 6 in your left hand, you have a ballpoint pen in your right hand, and you are looking at the back of the 8.5 by 11, and here are squares and lines filling the entire back of this receipt, and you have telepathic words that are coming into your mind, and at that moment, he thinks he's gone nuts. He doesn't understand what is happening. And they continue from that point going forward, getting to Colorado Springs, with him having binary code coming into his mind, all sorts of bizarre things, and the grays are becoming more vivid in more and more dreams. Now, when I got in touch with him, he sent me, because I asked, I said, can I have the receipt starting from Hunter Airfield? You said you stopped and you got a bungee cord and some stuff. I would like to make sense, at least on paper, of all the receipts that you've still got from that trip, so I can lay it out and try to understand. And in my Earth Files reports, all of these receipts at gas stations and the motel and the hotel and everything, I do have and lay out. And you get to my asking him if I could send these squares and ones to 3 different people who have worked with me on binary code and see what they would come up with. And at Earth Files, I have this whole story, and what is so interesting is that I did the same thing with binary code analyzing people on Jim Peniston from December 26, 1980, and I put a comparison in my Earth Files report, and I'm just, because we're compressing time, I'm going to give you the sentences first of what has come out from 3 very skilled binary code translators. They all agree. Here is the first line of the squares and lines in the Army sergeant who found himself becoming conscious in the bathroom, having filled up the back of the receipt. Here's the first line. Continuous protection of humanity, latitude, longitude, 49.27 degrees north, 11 degrees, 5 minutes east. And when I went to Google...
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Yep. 49.27 north,
Got it.
11.5 east. And I did this in Google Earth and could not believe that I was coming up in Hohenberg, Germany, about 100 miles northeast of Nuremberg. And I was thinking of course, Nuremberg was where the Nazi trials were held, but a friend of mine said, remember, Linda, that woodcut from 1561? It shows what appears to be what's called a UFO battle of different shaped craft in the sky around the sun and a great big black spear down below them. It is called the Hans Blazer woodcut from 1566, and it is a woodcut about an April 14th, 1561 battle over Nuremberg that was published in the Nuremberg Gazette of 1561. And this is what they said, that the morning sky was filled with cylindrical shapes from which emerged black, red, orange, and blue-white spheres that darted about. I'm reading from the Nuremberg Gazette. Between the spheres there were crosses with the color of blood. This frightful spectacle was witnessed by numerous men and women. Afterwards, a black spear-like object appeared, and it goes on saying that prior to this morning of 1561 in April, where there appeared to be a war in the skies, that right before this, get this sentence, the sun and the moon have been darkened on a number of occasions in the preceding weeks and months, which makes no sense, but this is a 1561 report. Well, what if this sentence, continuous protection of humanity, and this puzzling latitude, longitude, which turns out to be Hohenberg, Germany, 100 miles northeast of Nuremberg, means that this is an area of Earth where there have been battles between the friendlies and the unfriendlies, as Lynn Buchanan would say for remote viewing, and that there is something trying to actually protect humanity in a continuous, ongoing way. And now I'm going to go to the next sentences. So we're now with the Georgia Army Sergeant. Expose hidden knowledge to all citizens, and all is all caps in the binary code. Expose hidden knowledge to all citizens. Next sentence, advancement imperative for planetary survival, and the interpretation is human advancement imperative, that we're too dumb and slow and behind, and we've got to accelerate to. Then the next sentence. Beware of Orion 1350.3 and the single letter cap Z, and then reticuli is spelled R-U-T-I-C-U-L-I, and followed by 39.1, question mark on the binary 70. And the geneticist Horace Drew in Sydney, Australia, who did all of this translation that was backed up by the others, added this note. He said, those numbers, 1350.3 and 39.1 with a question mark and 70, they are actually the numbers of the distance in light years from Earth to the Orion Nebula, which is 1,350 light years, and to the binary star system of Zeta Reticuli 1 and 2, which is 39.17 light years. So he made that point. These numbers are not idle. They actually relate to light year distances.
Okay, here's what I don't get from all this, Linda.
The final last sentence.
All right, go ahead.
Avoid signal messages sent. And he and I talked, the implication is the danger of sending out SETI signals without knowing who is on the other end, that I was talking about Tesla's Elon Musk, Microsoft's Bill Gates, and Stephen Hawking worrying about. But just before you ask your question, because it's much shorter, Jim Tennyson, but listen to the words that are the same. We're jumping back 36 years. We're at December 26, 1980. Tennyson his mind is filled with zeros and ones when his fingers drag across the raised symbols on the glassy triangle. We're at December 26, 1980, and I just finished sentences from June 29th, because it was after midnight of 2015. And you just heard that. Now, here is Tennyson. Exploration of humanity. The next word is origin, 8100. No one understands that. The next line is latitude and longitude, followed by the word continuous. The latitude and longitude may be town center of Woodbridge, Suffolk, England, or Ancient Aliens Prometheus Productions. They interpreted the decimal point and put it out in the Atlantic Ocean at the mythical High Brazil. But it is another latitude-longitude, which is using the same communication, a sentence of words, and then followed by a latitude-longitude, the word continuous. The next line in Jim Pennison is for planetary advance, and the last line is fourth coordinate. Time is what the binary code people ask. Fourth coordinate, time, continuous, and the last word is before. Now, when you take the Penniston zeros and ones and you compare it to the June 29th, you have these overlapping words having to do with continuous is used in both. Protection of humanity is inferred.
Yep, I get it.
Advancement imperative for planetary survival is in both. And that there is something about the binary code, whether you were in the crop formation in front of Chilbolton, whether you were in Crabwood, whether you were exposed to the light and the symbols in Penniston's case in Rendlesham Forest, or this strange diversion from the freeway that took them for this encounter with this craft, there is something out there that is communicating the same ideas. We oppose deception. All humanity must know. Humans must advance for planetary survival. And the very idea, exploration of humanity and protection of humanity amidst forces that may not be protective of us.
All right, Linda, I get it all. I get it all, and I've heard it actually several times, and I've heard it from multiple sources. Now, you've nailed it down, but really, Linda, if this critical message that you're describing is being delivered in various extremely obscure ways, I mean, extremely obscure. We're talking about something of planetary importance, right? And coming
Why
from...
is it coming this way?
Yes, why in binary code and make it so obscure unless you've got to accept the possibility that you're getting screwed with?
Well, the other option is, which is what people in the abduction syndrome have suggested, the governments took a position of policies of denial, which are policies of lies, and denying that there is any other intelligence in the universe in World War II, and that there have been human abductees who have indicated that they've had communications telepathically or other in symbols that had something to do with a frustration on the part of the non-humans, feeling like that the government doesn't play straight with them, they may not be playing straight, and that humans are completely left out of this equation because it's all being handled by some sort of 1% of the planet, and that whatever the relationship is between the 1% controllers of Earth now and whatever all these different intelligences are, as Lynn Buchanan says, it isn't just 1, 2, or 3, there's a lot, and they have different agendas and mixed motives. It could be that the non-humans think that the only way to communicate without them perhaps being hurt is to try to do it one-on-one with people through their minds. I don't know. It's just, it is all so peculiar. And if we didn't share information like this in the Peniston binary code and the crop circle code, because it seems so strange, it seems so far-fetched, then we would be, I think, doing the same thing that the governments do. We would be cutting out some form of information that might actually be very valuable to humans.
I agree. I mean, sure, I agree with that. I just, it doesn't make common sense the way they're,
That's right.
It's so obscure, it just doesn't make sense. Very quickly, look, I've got to let some people talk to you, Linda. So,
Yeah.
Richard on Skype has been very patient. Richard?
Good evening, Art. How are you doing?
Doing fine. Do you have a question?
Yes. Linda, pleasure to talk to you, and Mega Roswell's. The information that we're getting through the binary code, is that telepathic?
Well, you have to assume that what went into Peniston's mind that wouldn't leave his mind, if you've heard him, he was so frustrated that zeros and ones were in his mind's eye, like out in a screen in front of him, and there wasn't anything he could do to get them out from under, like they were just frozen there, until he finally had what he thought was a telepathic thought to sit down and write them down. And that's where he put them in the back of the famous notebook, and none of us knew anything about his binary code until we were producing with the Ancient Aliens group. It was John Burroughs, Peniston, and me in Phoenix in fall of 2010 before we went to England all together for the 30th anniversary of the RAF Bentwaters. And that is when Peniston, for the very first time, showed any of us the zeros and ones, and John Burroughs was shocked that Peniston had not shown them to him in England. But Peniston said...
You got to admit, Linda, it came late.
Well, oh, yeah. But Peniston said, I just wondered if it was worth trying to see if anybody can figure out what this means, which is what set us off on getting binary translators. And remember that he has a description of the zeros and ones being very vivid and not being able to leave his mind. That is not something that humans know. Now, jump to the sergeant guy. He woke up, became beta conscious, having written down the zeros and ones. The corollary is that he had been seeing these squares and ones in the first dreams after the first night and had not written them down.
All right.
So somebody has the ability to put this kind of information in human minds and keep it there for reasons unknown until it is written down.
Richard, anything else?
Yes, just one more quick follow-up, and I'm calling you from Valdosta, Georgia today.
Okay.
Linda, what is the meaning and the possible correlation of the Georgia Guidestones to what's going on?
Well, I've been there. I was struck by the different, I think it's 8 different languages all saying the same thing, which is that the Earth's population must be reduced, that whoever was behind setting those up, it's like a kind of Stonehenge with the same wording in the 8 languages going around the faces of those stones. And it's my understanding that the man who paid for the whole thing to somebody who was a miner of granite and did all of this, disappeared. The tall man disappeared, and no one really knows who it was. So was it an extraterrestrial putting again another message in stone in such an esoteric, secret way? And I agree with you guys. It's very bizarre. The entire 5,000 years of civilization is bizarre because there are so many evidences of something not human interacting with and controlling and manipulating humans.
All right. We've got such little time. Daniel, if you're there, overseas somewhere, right?
Yeah, hi, Alan.
Where are you,
I'm calling you from a very Jersey, London at the moment.
I can hear rain falling.
You can. That's my umbrella. So just a quick one.
Very quick,
guys. Very quick. If you're first time listener, subscribe. Also, Linda. I'm a great lover of the What Do They Know website, the UK Freedom of Information.
Very quick,
just regarding a rendition forest, what are you kind of expecting to see out of the upcoming releases from the events over there?
All right. Hold on till after the break. Linda, hold on. We're out of break. I have no choice. This is where we have to break. All right. This is Midnight in the Desert. Moving along and unstoppable in night.
Feel free to sniff our packets. Then, with a smile on your face, please call the show at 1-952-225-5278. That's 1-952. Art.
Well, okay. I want to say this, and because I need to get it out. If the American people, if the world's people, are not willing to listen to well-educated, very, very well-educated scientists who are explaining that our climate is deteriorating before our very eyes, ice is melting, salinity is becoming less saline. We're in danger of having water inundate our major cities and cover them up. If the American people don't care about the changing climate, then to me it seems that an alien race who would be warning us of great danger or the history of their fight above our atmosphere, whatever the case may be, and doing so with a binary code brought late to the table with regard to Rendlesham, and now on the back of a Motel 6 receipt and more, is just, I'm sorry, but I just cannot buy it as a reasonable way to communicate with anybody. It's just absolute insanity to me. And it may all tie in very neatly, but the method is so ridiculous. If we want to attribute it to an advanced civilization, then they've got to find a better way to get this through to us. That's all I can say. Linda, I'm sorry, but it just seems crazy.
I completely agree with you that it has... if you go back through the entire evolution of starting with Betty and Barney Hill up to today,
right,
that the communications with humans by the various types of non-humans have always been so bizarre. There have been theatrical productions that humans have found, as if the ETs were doing some kind of a holographic production with telepathic communication and symbols going into their heads. The symbols, something about symbols and binary code have been linked for a very long time. The idea of touching symbols and getting downloads has been a part of the fabric. And so whatever we're dealing with, it does not interact with humans in a human way, that is for sure.
Okay.
If we are dealing with androids that are programmed to do a specific kind of work on this planet, and we're not dealing with the prime intelligence that made them, it may be that there's something cumbersome about always having the androids trying to deal with the humans. I don't have the answers, but I really think it is important to pay attention to some of these cases where people are not trying to sell anything. They really are anguished about what has happened. And when you get down into these kinds of binary depths, whether it's Pennison or Sergeant CJ or others, and you start seeing these same kinds of communication, you could say, why would there even be these same words or these same lines coming up over 35 years or 50 years?
I'm willing to ask that question why. We've got a guy standing in the rain in London, Linda, so let's let him...
Yes, and he asked the question about the 18 withheld UFO, UAP-related files by the MOD. And it started with work by John Burroughs, and they finally admitted to John in September of 2014 that in spite of all of the big show in 2011 that the MOD had released all of their UFO files to the National Archive, they didn't, and we knew it, but now they have admitted it. And right now, the 18, 6 of them are policy files. They are labeled as policy files. John thinks there's a possibility that if we actually could get access to those files, it might be very, very important material. But in quoting him from an interview I did when he has been getting these admissions, he said that, do I think at the end of the day in September of 2015, and now the MOD has extended from 2015 September to the end, possibly the spring or the end of 2016. They pushed it back, the release on these 18 withheld files even further. So John says, do I think at the end of the day in September 2015 next year, if they release this, it's going to tell us anything? Probably not. They're going to cover it up and they are just going to blow it off. But you never know if you keep the pressure on. What will they end up doing? Because I believe this pressure itself got them to release something they did not want out, which was Project Condign and the admission on these files.
Okay, back to London. Daniel?
That's great. I mean, there was an update on, I believe...
I'm sorry, you broke up there. What?
Date on January, I believe they disclosed. I believe there was an update in January. They released an update saying there was, I think, 12 or so files that are still yet to be released, and they're still considered doing it. What do you think is the next big disclosure that's coming up?
Okay.
KIC, artificial megastructure.
I can certainly go along with that. All right, let's try a phone call, shall we? Hi, you're on with Linda Howe.
Hi, how's it going? I have a question for Linda. You haven't touched on any of the cow mutilations tonight.
No, we haven't.
She's made a lot of, information on cow mutilations, and I wanted to get an idea of what her theory would be about the government actually doing them and covering up with the UFO story. Because they wanted to test the cattle for radiation that the cattle have been grazing on.
Well, it's a thought. We're so short. We're very short on time. Linda, have you come to any conclusions?
I can give you the hard fact reason of why that is not even feasible. I have worked with so many veterinarian pathologists and the John Altshuler, hematologist, pathologist, and when you get report after report, number one, no hemoglobin in the capillaries around excisions. You can't pump out capillary blood. It has to have been taken in a molecular atomic way. If you have talked with the veterinarians that I have, who sheriffs went to them privately and off the record and asked them to do necropsies, and there is no surgical excision in the body of a 2,000-pound bull. But when they open up the mutilated animal that has an ear, eye, tongue, jaw, flesh, genitals, and rectum poured out all bloodlessly, and they find that the internal heart is missing from inside the pericardium, but there's no clotted blood, or that the esophagus has been removed surgically and there's no blood, or every single organ in what's called the mediasternum has been removed, which is the chest. And that was John Altshuler's firsthand experience in 1967 at the horse in southern Colorado, where the horse laid in an area of the desert where there were no hooves around that horse, with it was stripped of flesh from the neck up, and all the organs had been removed from the professional doctors looking at it and said they were removed professionally, and there was no blood, no clotted blood, there was no sign of blood. How would you take the internal organs out of a chest of a horse without having any signs of fluid? And Dr. Altshuler and so many others came to the conclusion that we are dealing with technology that is working at a molecular level, that it is able to cook hemoglobin, it is able to remove entire organs from within animal bodies without any surgery to the external body. And then you look at what law enforcement told me right from the beginning in 79. They had seen beams, they had seen discs, and when Sheriff Tex Graves sat across from me and looked me straight in the eyes in September of 1979 and said, "Linda, I'll save you some time. The perpetrators of animal mutilations are creatures from outer space." That has never changed. There have been at least 3,500 mutilations in Argentina since 2002. And the reports from veterinarians in necropsies have been the excisions have been cut with something that is heating the tissue.
Fair enough. Okay, so you're saying the government could not have done this, period.
No, they could not have done this. And no carbon at the excisions where there is cooked hemoglobin. We are carbon-based life forms. Mm-hmm. You take any kind of laser surgery to a human or to an animal, and you will be able to see carbon grains underneath in a microscope. In the mutilation excisions, there is no carbon residue. That has always been a big puzzle. What is the cutting instrument? No, it's extraterrestrials. And if it is a harvest of genes and genetic material, my guess now, today in 2015, is that a genetic harvest from this planet has been going on, I think, for hundreds of thousands of years. And it's been being applied to the creation of hybrids and clones, mm-hmm. and all kinds of things that serve some prime intelligences for reasons unknown.
All right, Bill on Skype very quickly with Linda. Hi.
Hey.
Go ahead.
Roswell's Art. Can't believe I'm on, and I know I got to go quick. And I'm on an Android device.
Go ahead. No, I don't know. Go ahead.
A doctor, I can't say his name, it's you, doctor or whatever. He talks about a civilization 0 to 3.
Yes.
And when you had Stephen Greer on, he was talking about all the way to 10. I don't even know if that exists.
Nor do I.
But my point to this, and then I'll let her comment, and I do love you. I listened to you. I loved you at the citizens hearing. I thought you made the best points, and I was just forward. But
okay,
anyway,
go ahead quickly. Your question, please.
If you go all the way to 10, that means we're just sentient beings, and there really is no life, no compassion. I don't know. But my point is how many are there in between? I mean, can't there be ones visiting us that are a two?
All right, Linda.
Lynn Buchanan, remote viewer. I have great respect for the work he did. He was working with Joe McMoneagle and Mel Riley and Pat Price and all of those talented guys right on the NSA's property at Fort Meade in the 1980s. And Lynn Buchanan said when he had a task to do this remote viewing on extraterrestrials, divided into these categories of psychic and non-psychic, friendly and unfriendly, he said, it isn't just 4. There are hundreds and hundreds of types of non-humans, that the universe has lots of life in it, and that the puzzle, in many ways, is why is it from the Earth's perspective we are in a silent universe? Why is it not booming and buzzing to our instruments and to us? Why does it appear to be so silent when, in fact, to the remote viewers, it is filled with all kinds of intelligences, and that there are all kinds of mixed agendas, and that not everything is friendly, but that we do have allies that have been trying to protect humanity? Why does it have to be so behind the scenes? Why does it have to be so seemingly not straightforward? That is a big question. And on the government side, they chose a policy of denial, which was to officially lie for 68 years now. And what I don't understand, and Jim Mars and a whole bunch of others, we are at a point on this planet where telling the truth about other life in the universe might actually be therapy for a lot of this planet. It might actually stop some of the tribal warfare. And why is it that we can't get on with it? I do not think that the vast majority of people are going to be running off cliffs like lemmings. I think the vast majority of people are already there, that we're not alone in the universe.
All right, very quickly, a question from Sean somewhere. Where are you, Sean? Hello, Sean. Going once. Going twice. Gone. Let's go to Michigan very quickly with Linda. Hi. Hello, Michigan.
Oh.
Yes.
Hello, this is Matt in Ann Arbor.
Yes.
I wonder if Ms. Howe has a theory as to what's behind the cattle mutilations.
Yeah, it's a genetic harvest, and it is a genetic harvest with an application that I think is applied to hybrid creation and rapid cycle cloning and a lot of things that would not be very comprehensible to humans, but have been described to me by people who have had exposure in government and military work, and that I think it has been going on this planet perhaps millions of years, and that what we humans are going to finally realize and discover is that if it is civilization 2s and 1s out there that are moving through galaxies, and they have the ability because they've solved the energy problem and that they can move dimensionally, then what they need often must be planets like this one that are sort of like huge supermarkets and gardens. And the relationship between us on this planet and some of those out there, as Jim Peniston said, that he got the telepathic downloads when he touched the symbols at Rendlesham Forest and got the impression that this was a time machine, that what had sent it were 40,000 years in the future related to us, and they were coming back 40,000 years to gather genetic material to use as, quote, Band-Aids, close quote, in order to keep a civilization alive, buying time while they harvested genetic material from places in the past.
All right, Linda, we're running out of time. Show's ending. Have you been following Dr. Jacobs' latest work?
Not really. I know that he has taken a very negative approach on the Greys. I think Lynn Buchanan is more accurate, that it isn't even so much what they look like as that they can be a mixed bag, but it's that you can have something that looks the same, and some are friendly and some are not.
Well, Dr. Jacobs is now believing that we are actually being invaded by hybrids, a result of the genetic work that you were just talking about. We're out of time, Linda. We're out of time. Show's ending.
We'll have to do a show on just hybrids sometime.
Yes.
It's a huge story.
Yes, it is a huge story. You're right. Thank you very much, Linda. Bless
Thank
you.
you, Art.
We'll do it again, boy. We got a lot in this show. Good night.
Good night. God bless.
God bless. Good night, everybody. All 25 time zones. Woof. You get a word in very quickly. If you want to hear old shows, we got a lot of them. A lot of them. Become a time traveler. You do that by going to artbell.com. And you can download old shows. You can send messages on the computer. It's quite the deal. Time travelers at artbell.com. Good night, everybody.
And with that, of course, we'll bring this show to a close as well. Like, share, and subscribe. Get us to those 50,000 views, 1,000 subscribers, and boxes, sizzles, red packages. YouTube will pay attention to us. And until then, it's always a great new world to release the Krakens. Like, share, and subscribe. Be kind to one another. And join us again tomorrow as we continue to march along here from day one. Have a great evening and enjoy your rest. We'll see you tomorrow.